Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of Reddit ProRevenge. I've got 8 stories for you in this one. The first story is how a husband got back at a CO worker for stealing his wife's phone. The second story is why you shouldn't pick on strangers. The third is why you should always be nice when speaking to customer service, especially at 3 in the morning. And the fourth is how an employer was forced to pay a hefty fine for keeping an important door locked. I hope you stay for all the stories today and subscribe for future videos. This one's titled, "Coworker Stole My Wife's Phone." For a bit of background, this happened a few years back when smartphones were just starting to get cool. HTC released the first Android phone, the G1. I got one for myself and one for my wife. It was her first non-flip phone, and she loved the keyboard. We worked together at a clinical lab running people's blood work and such. This is actually how we came to know each other. I called in sick one day, and my wife went to work without me. While I was crashed on the couch feeling miserable, I got an email from her phone. I had installed an app that reports home with all kinds of useful information when the SIM card gets switched out. Later, when my wife got home, she asked me if I had seen her phone, thinking that she'd forgotten it at home when it was actually stolen from her purse at work. A few days later, I'm over my illness and back at work. Knowing the phone was stolen, most likely by a CO worker, I decided to play dumb and talked very openly about how forgetful my wife is, saying things like, "This is the 3rd phone she's lost." I struck up a conversation with a girl who had been rumored to have sticky fingers. Other ladies at the lab suspected her of taking money from their purses, but nothing could be proven. After a friendly conversation with her, she offered to lend me and my wife her old sidekick, as she'd recently gotten a new phone and wasn't using it. I thanked her for her kindness and asked if we could talk more over text. She gave me her number, and I checked the email the lost phone had sent days previous. Of course, the number associated with the SIM card that was put into my wife's phone matched the suspected coworkers. I continued to play dumb and let her kindly loan me the sidekick to replace my wife's lost phone. She even offered to sell it to me for cheap because we're friends. I let it sit for a few days, and when she began asking for money for the phone she'd given me, I laid it out over text message. I informed her that I had proof of her taking the phone, and I would go to HR if she didn't return it. Of course, she denied the theft at first, but agreed to all my demands and eventually admitted to having the phone, which she would return on condition of my silence. Once my wife's phone was back in my possession, I presented all the transcripts and relevant emails to the HR lady. After getting my email summing up the events, she asked me out to lunch so I could give her the whole story. She was very excited to be a part of it. A few weeks went by and nothing happened. Then one morning I woke up to an interesting text saying, "How could you do this to me? I got fired because of you. I thought we had a deal." I smiled to myself, got up, poured a cup of coffee, and then replied, "I said don't dance with the devil," and blocked her number. This one's titled, "Bully a Poor Stranger, Never Get Your Car Part." This revenge was not mine, but I was lucky enough to see it happen. I headed to a local chain auto parts store last night, looking for a particular component for my wife's temperamental car. As my young daughter and I headed inside, there was some douchebag guy, henceforth DBG, hanging out in front of the shop, standing next to a heavily modified car with an obnoxiously large spoiler, tons of stickers, and enough bass pouring from it to damage the nearby concrete. He was yelling something over the music, lecturing some poor employee about the magic under his open hood. The employee looked pretty desperate to get away. I went inside and browsed for a few minutes. Okay, honestly, I stared blankly at the components and tried to comprehend what I needed. Then DBG entered. I could tell the exact moment he came in, as there was a flood of bass and his loud voice, which didn't lower in volume as the door closed behind him. His speech was eloquent, with frick being probably every second or third word, a real peach. The unfortunate employee had followed DBG inside, and now DBG was making demands about his car needs, saying, "Bro, I need that fricking dingle hopper like fricking yesterday, you know what I mean?" I rolled my eyes and hoped that my daughter was learning a life lesson here. Abruptly there came a shout from DBG, even louder than he'd been. He said, "Dude, what the frick, bro?" I reflexively poked my head out of the aisle, trying to see what was up. Another customer, some poor bastard, henceforth PB, apparently had the audacity to be up at the counter at the same time as DBG, and now DBG was squaring off with him. All I heard was, "What the frick's your problem, bro? I'm sorry, I was just trying. Do you want to fricking go?" At this point, I have to note that I'm uncertain what PB did to spark that reaction. There was some little product on the floor between the two men, so I think that PB may have accidentally dropped it or knocked it off a rack. Whatever happened, DBG was completely in PB's face, arms extended and chest puffed out. PB was shrinking away, trying to avoid being beaten to a pulp as he tried to apologize. He began to stutter, which just fueled the douchebag. He said, "Ha, you frickin' little twerp, look at you. You gonna cry, bro?" PB backed off, hands up to ward off a potential attack. As soon as he was clear, he booked his ass out of the store. DBG turned back to the employee who was standing behind the counter looking shell-shocked. DBG said, "You believe that, fricking bro? Fricking guy thinks he can step up to me." At this point, I'm contemplating my options. I'm the kind of guy who just can't keep my mouth shut. Maybe I should have something in reach in case he threatens me, but oh crap, I can't endanger my daughter. Maybe I should demand he be thrown out, or I take my business elsewhere. A millisecond later, a manager appeared next to the employee on the other side of the counter, keeping me from doing something stupid. I shall call him manager with 20-pound brass balls. Says, "Hey, so that was a 95, right? Fricking bro, you got it. We don't, but a warehouse in the next town over does. I already went ahead and ordered it, bro. Sweet, when can I pick it up?" "Not so fast. I didn't order it for you. I went ahead and ordered it for the store, and after that uncalled-for behavior, you're not allowed to shop here anymore. By the way, while I was on the computer, I saw that there were 3 more dinglehoppers within a 6-hour radius. I bought them all. Looks like you're out of luck." The manager then told him to get out and never come back. DBG stared for a long moment and then stomped out the door. He peeled out of the parking lot with a screech. The manager was still at the register when I went to check out. I said, "Wow, some people, right?" He replied, "Story of my life, unfortunately." So, I had to ask, "Did you really buy all the parts he needs?" "Yeah, I did a search, and there are none available. Odd part, not many made, you just can't get them." But now he thinks he screwed himself out of them, and I get to feel like I stuck up for that poor guy. This story is titled, "Drunken Woman Berates Me While I'm Trying to Help." A few years ago, I used to work overnight from 11 at night to 7 in the morning for an insurance company. I did roadside assistance, which consisted of people calling in about a flat tire, dead battery, or in this case, keys locked in the car. I'd then call and pay a contracted company to go out and help. So, around 3 in the morning my time, a woman calls in from Phoenix for help. She's locked out of her car. She starts the call off, very impatient and belligerent. First off, she was slurring heavily, so I was having a hard time getting her address, which I guess was my fault. I had to have her repeat the city a few times since I genuinely could not understand her. She hated this and began mocking me and implying that I wasn't from the country, which, in fact, I was. Apparently my southern accent didn't allude to that. Anyway, once I got the address, I asked what the address was for. A reference for the locksmith, house, gas station, etc. She said it was a house. I looked it up in Google Maps and it was, in fact, a dive bar. I put her on hold to call the locksmith. Once I got back over, she continued to be generally displeased and angry at me personally because it would take 45 minutes for the locksmith to get there, which is actually a decent time, especially past midnight. I hung up and Googled the local police. I called them and reported her for a potential DUI, mostly because she pissed me off. Sure enough, about 45 minutes later, the locksmith called back saying that he couldn't perform the service. I could hear yelling in the background. Apparently, the woman began fighting with a police officer when he arrived and was being arrested by the time the driver showed up. Her boyfriend or husband was trying to talk them out of it. So, it turns out she did have a designated driver, but her drunken anger made her start fighting the police that showed up. Be nice to call center employees. This story is titled, "Don't Fire People for Being Injured at Work." A friend of mine was electrocuted at work and was pretty badly injured. Later on, he was fired because he was electrocuted. Fortunately, he turned that around when he learned he could get disability for the electrocution, but it knocked out several teeth that aren't coming back. Anyway, I called OSHA and told them about the electrocution. They weren't so interested in that, but perked right up when I told them that the place routinely locked the emergency fire exit doors to prevent employees from stepping outside to sneak a smoke. Well, they inspected, found the locked emergency exit doors, and went to town on them. It turns out a long time ago, a business on the East Coast locked the security doors, and there was a fire, killing several dozen people. OSHA gets very, very sensitive about stuff like that. The owner was fined $40,000 for the security doors. He also spent quite a bit of money fighting for 10 years, but eventually had to pay anyway. This story is titled, "Woman Tries to Steal My Safety, Gets a Criminal Record." Last Saturday, I rode to my town's street mall. My bike has a helmet strap lock. It looks like you can just grab my helmet and take off, but you can't. After lunch, I saw a woman trying to get my helmet detached. Luckily, there was a mall cop nearby. I filled him in and told him that I was going to confront her as casually as I could. I wandered over and started asking her questions. "Wow, what year's that? That an 800cc? Don't see too many women riders." The mall cop was behind her the whole time. At first she answered, but then she told me to piss off. I replied, "Hold on, I'm interested in buying your bike." She said, "You can't have my bike. This is my bike. Get away from it." She got up all huffy and started swearing at me. Well, a real policeman ended up approaching us, and she turned to leave and ran into the mall cop. He grabbed her arm. We filled the real cop in as she tried to wriggle out. The mall cop had been filming on his phone and showed the real officer. She was taken to the station, immediately released, but got an $800 charge for attempted robbery and a court date. This story is titled, "I Took Away His Ride for Messing with Mine." On Halloween 2012, it was around 2 in the morning, and I had just arrived back home from a neighborhood party. As I walked toward my house and the porch light came on, I couldn't help but notice that the left side of my car was completely covered in egg, all over the window, all over the door, all down the windscreen, and underneath the window wipers too. I was naturally infuriated, but it was Halloween after all, and I had just gotten unlucky. I proceeded to spend 15 minutes getting the egg off my car in the dark. After thinking I had finally succeeded, I decided to sit in the car with a cigarette on the driveway and call my friend. This is where it begins. As I sat there, I could see through the rearview mirror a car going past my house, slowing down, turning around, and driving past again. It must have happened 4 to 5 times. What if these were the people who had egged my car? I thought. I explained to my friend that I needed to go, put the phone down, and continued to watch this car acting really strangely on the road out front until it finally stopped 2 meters in front of my driveway. The engine went off, and through the darkness, I could make out a tall, hooded figure slowly depart from his crapmobile and walk up to the rear of my car. He was checking around him and looking in the direction of the house before he crouched down behind my car and went out of sight. Was this the guy who had vandalized my car? What's he up to now? Without hesitation, I launched myself out of the driver's seat and charged around the side of my driveway. He was obviously not expecting that, as he bolted away from the house and his car down the street in a record-breaking sprint. I looked down and saw 2 massive fireworks shoved into my car's exhaust, which he was about to light while I sat in the car. By this time, he was well out of sight, so I walked up to his car. He had left the windows down on the driver's side. I put my head through and saw 2 guys sitting there, silently staring at me in complete horror. To my surprise, the keys were still in the ignition. I quickly yanked them out and walked back into my house. I had taken his car prisoner on my driveway. Without hesitation, I was on the phone with the police. They said they were on the way and wanted to know where the guy was. By this time, he had come back to the house and began banging on the front door, shouting threats and demanding his keys back. Then the flashing lights came. I stood there, holding his keys, while he was swiftly arrested for attempted arson and vandalism. Halloween was complete. I still have no idea who he was or why he was targeting me, but I did get a thank you from the police because he was well known to them. The car was removed first thing in the morning, and I assume his friends bailed out of the car before the police came. This story is titled, "The Whole Homeowners Association Gets Tyrannosaurus Wrecked," literally. I used to live in a 2-story townhouse in Vancouver around 2010 with my parents. Keep in mind that this is Canada, where HOAs are not as common as in the USA and are not seen as evil, but this HOA was different. First, the characters. My mother was a 50-year-old woman working at a grocery store, and she wore a headscarf. She was a very nice woman to everyone she met, including people she knew hated her for whatever reason. Kill them with kindness, right? I was in engineering school and was about to graduate in a few months. What was the problem? These OA bastards were a group of fat asses, probably retired, and stay-at-home moms and dads. They made sheesh rules like, all the floor mats must be straight against the door, inspections of your suite will be done monthly, and the worst of which was no overnight or late-night guests. We owned our residence, and here these bastards were trying to ruin it by making it seem as if we were tenants. My family was wanting to bring my grandmother to Canada, and the visa had just made it through. We were excited to have her, so we went to the airport and came back with her. On the way, a meeting of the HOA was happening. One of the ladies from the HOA asked us straight up, "Who is this, and why does she have bags?" I said, "She'll be staying with us for a month, and it's my granny." The hippo's eyes locked onto my gran and pretty much said, "You can't be here." Since my grandma didn't speak English, she looked at me in confusion. In the end, though, my mom and I had a large conversation with the POS, and she agreed to give us one last warning, whatever. The next day, at 11 p.m., she knocks on the door. She then said, "I'm going to let you know that I'll have to give you guys fines if I cannot see your mother's back on the security cameras." Her face was visible, but I needed a proper view in case we get burglars. It was late, so I didn't argue, and I went back without telling my mother. The next day, she confronts my mom. My mom was furious and told her to leave and not be racist. The HOA POs yelled at her and called her a shishti beach, mixed along with some other stuff, and left. I'll never forget that night. My mother wept like a baby for the night, and it was the worst night of my life, second only to when she passed away last year. I could not see this BS continue. I did what I thought would be best. I went around and took questions from every single house and asked about this shishti. They all said the same thing. On my way home, I noticed the shishti fine being written on our door for failing to keep our floor mats straight and up against the door. It's a circle. How are we supposed to make it straight against the door? At any rate, I spent some time on Reddit asking legal advisors from Canada what could be done. They all recommended that I get a form of proxy for all residents that would let me vote for them just via myself. I got around 50 people out of 60 to sign it, and boy was I ready. The next election, I voted every single one of those bastards out and made my mother the head of the association. I got the position of vice president and removed all those rules. The next day, I made rules for the new HOA, and all it said was literally this: the HOA exists only to make sure no other HOA could take its place. There are absolutely no enforced rules here besides keeping your portion of the hallway clean and not interfering with other members' residences. And this, my friends, is how I made the old HOA extinct. The shishti people became really friendly afterward. This story is titled, "Church Camp is Hades." So, a few hours ago, I was a worker for this Baptist summer camp not far from my home. We'll just call it what it is, Hades. I've been a devoted staff member for 3 years, even managing the concession stand for one of them. I was a hard worker, consistently jumping in to do jobs that nobody really wanted to do, like taking out the trash, pulling weeds, restocking vending machines, etc. On top of that, I was generally the favorite staffer of the kids that rolled through camp. Now, camp policy was for staff to live on campus when they were working, which for most staff was a weekday. Those of us who worked weekends had to request it. I did this frequently, as I genuinely loved the work I was doing. I even worked the off-season as much as I could. Midway through my 3rd summer in Hades, I ended up with a really bad inner ear infection, so I took my allotted week off to recover. Toward the end of the week, I was asked to be on call for the weekend. I didn't have my driver's license at the time, and my family was 3.5 hours out of town for the weekend, so I requested to stay on campus in case I was needed. I was told that was not a problem. That was incorrect. 2 hours after arriving on Friday, I'm called down to the dining hall, where the week's staff was having their final meeting to receive paychecks and debrief. I think nothing of this. I come walking into the dining hall, thrilled to see my companions for the first time in a little over a week, to find the owner of the camp, we'll call him Phil, sitting with the entire staff. Phil asks me to come sit with him, and I oblige. As far as I was aware, he was pretty fond of me, so I wasn't concerned. I was wrong to think that way. The following conversation unfolded in front of 30 of my co-workers. Phil says, "What are you doing here, pal?" I replied, "I was asked to be on call, sir. I was told I could stay on campus since my family's out of town for the weekend." He replied, "I see. Well, we don't need you. You can go home." I said, "I actually can't. My family's out of town and my dad has my house key and I don't drive." Phil then said, "I'm sorry to hear that. You'll have to find somewhere to go then because you can't stay here." Me, very calm through this whole ordeal, said, "Phil, I don't have anywhere I can go." Phil, being the guy he is, says again, "I'm sorry to hear that, but it's not really my problem, is it? You should have thought this one through." So, at this point, the entire room has gone silent. All of my co-workers are watching in shock, completely unsure of how to react to this, and then Phil notices. He then goes on and says, "You know what? I'm sorry. You can stay here, but I'm going to work you hard, and you'll be working for the housing alone. I won't be paying you, and you'll have to figure food out." He then looks to the staff, who are even more horrified now, and addresses them. He asks them, "Am I being unfair? Do y'all think this is unreasonable?" Nobody said a word. I'm fuming. My face is probably very visibly red, and I'd love nothing more than to explode, but I do my best to stay calm through this whole thing. I say that I'll figure something out and leave without another word. That night was spent sleeping on the side of the road just off the property. The next day I started forming my plan. My parents were aware of the situation and wanted desperately to come get me, but I refused this. I spent Saturday hiding in my CO worker's room. They were checking my room for me like I was some kind of criminal. Sunday night I slept in my room because, at this point, I just really didn't give a flying fooch. Monday morning, I made my way into the dining hall out of uniform and took a seat. When the whole staff was present, I stood. It was my day to deliver our devotional, so nobody really thought anything of it. My speech was as follows: My fellow staff members, you were all present Friday to witness the way I was treated by our loving and fearless leader, Phil. I'm sure many of you were uncomfortable through the course of our conversation, but I want you all to be assured that I got along just fine. Did I resort to sleeping on the side of the road like an animal? Yes. Did I hide on campus for the rest of the weekend and have to beg someone to sneak food to me? Again, yes. But that's all right. I must ask you, though, if Phil has no problem treating me this way after giving 3 years of my life to this camp, how do you think he's going to treat you? He was more than happy to put me on the street for a weekend, knowing that I had nowhere to go. And, correct me if I'm wrong, but that doesn't seem very Christ-like to me. So, endure his mistreatment as long as he wants, but I think I've had enough. With that, I walked out the door with 10 of my coworkers right behind me. The following week, I caught wind of another 15 quitting after enduring half an hour of Phil sheesh talking to the staff. The camp was left with maybe 6 employees as a group of 850 campers were coming through, and I'd honestly never felt so powerful. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed these stories today. Also, if you aren't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss future stories. See you guys in the next one.